I'm Tom Leonard. I'm the host of the Gamers Change Lives podcast. When it comes to esports, I am definitely not the expert. I'm more of an explorer. The goal of the podcast is to talk to esports entrepreneurs and others around the world to learn how esports can create jobs and to hopefully inspire others to do just the same. Our tagline is play games, create jobs, change lives. Now we're in season 2 and we're talking with experts in investment, in sponsorship, in media rights, streaming, to show how you can generate revenue for your esports business. Because one of the things that we've learned is it takes money to create jobs. We call the season Follow the Money. Now today I'm honored to have Jon Satterley from Australia. He's the CEO and co-founder at Fortress Esports. Welcome, Jon.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Great. Hey, I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time here. Where are you speaking to us from?
From Melbourne, Victoria, Australia.
Great. Have you always lived in Australia?
I've lived here most of my life. I spent 5 years living in New York City, and that was a little interlude, but most of my life has been spent living in Melbourne, yeah. 1 year in Sydney. 1 year in Sydney as well, actually.
Got it. Now, I mean, you have a really interesting background. That's one of the reasons that I really liked when Reginald found you to invite you to come on the podcast, because you have a background that also involves entertainment, even music, and we'll talk about how that can relate to esports. But Can you tell us just a little bit in general, a little bit about your background and what got you interested in esports and gaming?
Yeah, happily. So my first love and first passion in life was or is heavy metal music. And since the age of about 12 or 13, that was what I was obsessed with. I still am. And all I wanted to do when I was younger was be involved somehow in music industry, somehow to help, make music or sell the music that I loved, or just be involved in it. Didn't really even know what it was. Just wanted to be part of that. I can't play any music, got zero musical talent, but just wanted to be involved in something I felt very passionate about. And it so happened I did go to uni and I got a law degree and an arts degree and all these things, and yet never really wanted to do any of that. All I wanted to do was, I was happy just packing boxes in a warehouse in a record company back in the 90s rather than follow sort of the traditional professional careers of the things that university had outlined for me. And one thing led to another, and I was managing bands, and I had my own little independent record label, putting out CDs back, mid-90s, early 90s. And I got an opportunity to join a record company called Roadrunner Records, which was, at the time, the world's #1 sort of heavy metal hard rock record label. So it was a dream come true. And I effectively sort of set up the Australian arm of that record company. And I was the managing director in Australia for that business for 12 and a half years. And eventually we had some big successes. Some of the biggest bands in the sort of rock and heavy metal world were on our label. And I got picked by the founder of the company to move to New York City and be a general over there for sort of help run the global company, which by that stage had been bought by Warner Music. So I was there for 5 years, sort of immersed in global music industry type affairs, and learnt a lot about, sort of opened up my perspectives. At the same time, or earlier, just before I went to New York, I actually completed an MBA, and the reason I did that was because I didn't want to get trapped in just being a music industry guy. I wanted to understand more about business beyond just the confines of the record industry. But nonetheless, went there, did my thing. Warner Music, actually, it was an unhappy day that a lot of us Roadrunner veterans called the Red Wedding, where Warner Music effectively shut the label down and about 50 people got fired all in one day. So that was a lot of fun. And I basically decided at that stage to come back to Australia and joined a entertainment conglomerate out of Australia called Village Roadshow, which owns theme parks and cinemas, and even at the time had a record label distribution. It was sort of like a mini Disney, I suppose, of Australia. And I joined them and became the chief digital officer at Village Roadshow. So I sort of expanded my purview beyond just music industry and became more of like an entertainment industry executive. Now, the thing about games is the other passionate and love that I've had, or obsession since I was a teenager, was heavy metal music and video games. And so the whole time I was sort of involved in the music industry, I also was obsessed with video games. And it so happened that while I was at Village Roadshow, I was kind of commissioned to come up with new business strategies and, trying to think about digital disruption. And I knew that there was something in it with video games, and Village had no play in that space. And I believe that was the right strategic move at the time for Village to make a play into the video games industry. Didn't know exactly what that should be. And in around 2016, 2017, esports became a major kind of a topic du jour, you might say, where everyone was saying esports all the time. And I didn't really know that much about esports. I knew a fair bit about video games, but I didn't really know I didn't know that much about even the video games industry. I just knew that I liked video games and that it was a lucrative industry. But esports seemed like an avenue worth pursuing because I really liked the combination of video game playing coupled with live social experiences. I love the idea of people going to a stadium to watch a live video games event, a competitive video games event. So that piqued my interest because of coming out of the music industry, concerts and gigs and live being part of, inherently part of the music business. I thought, well, this is great, this combo in the video games business of bringing those entertainment pieces together. Now, I worked there on a business model and a business case at Village for about a year and a half, and for a whole bunch of reasons, not even could take up a whole other podcast, Village Roadshow opted not to pursue the business case that I put forward. But happily for me and for everybody, that I left the business as a result, but I had some of the IP assigned over, and I was able to then set up Fortress, my company that I co-founded, with a lot of the learnings and takeaways from the business research that I'd done at Village to help me understand what the next steps should be in this burgeoning games industry market that we then embarked upon.
There's so much there. Yeah, it could be another podcast. One of the things I think is really interesting is you were kind of involved in the whole shift into digital. I mean, when you were talking about music in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then talking about doing things at Village Roadshow as the chief digital officer and everything. I mean, that was a time when, people don't always understand that there was a before digital world, and it had certain guardrails and certain ways that things were done. And once digital showed up, it just kind of stirred everything up. So one of the things I think is interesting is the way you're kind of surfing between music and then into entertainment and then into esports, kind of all with digital.
Yeah, I mean, the economics, of course, one of the reasons why Warner Music decided to shut Roadrunner Records down close effectively the independent part of the business and just collapse it into the parent in 2012 was because that was probably the nadir of the music industry, where there was the disruption that had occurred from piracy, but there hadn't been the emergence yet of Spotify and iTunes as a viable business model. So it was the absolute trough, and they couldn't see, no one in 2012, everyone goes, oh yeah, look, Spotify's killing it now, and the music industry is going gangbusters. But in 2012, it was absolutely bottoming out. And we came off of 2010 and 2010 for the business had been enormous. We'd sold like just mountains of CDs, still selling truckloads of them. But I think the parent company sort of figured that there was, just worse things to come because no one could see that the digital revolution in music was going to, resolve in a happy ending for the music industry. And there was a lot of layoffs and a lot of kind of rationalizing of the music industry around around 2010 and for the first, say, 5 years of that decade until about 2016, 2017, when it really started to kind of climb right back up to be going crazy now. So I guess for me, it was always about trying to understand how that digital disruption that was occurring could be capitalized on, and trying to, for me, it was not as perhaps as strategic as that. Like I said at the beginning, I really just wanted to do stuff that connected with what I am interested in. Like I just like games and music, and particularly one kind of music. And so I just wanted to figure out, almost selfishly, how do I create a business that can allow me to do stuff in an industry, that's connected to stuff I like. Because the thing I'd learned also at Village Roadshow was, I mean, this is probably probably a bad thing to say, but I just don't like movies very much. And partly what I mean by that is I loathe superhero movies. I hate Hollywood movies. I just can't get excited by blockbuster movies. So I was finding that was a bit deadening. Like I just had no passion anymore for where I was, because I couldn't get excited by the latest Spider-Man movie or something. I didn't care about that. I just couldn't get excited by. I'm not a big theme parker. I mean, I don't mind them, but I'm not a Disney weirdo who loves collecting Mickey Mouse stuff. I'm not one of those theme parks people. So I was finding it hard to kind of connect with what it was that I was supposed to be selling or promoting. And that was alien to me, because since I'd been a young person, all I really wanted to do was connect my business career and my life to the things that I personally was interested in. Now, I won't go as far as saying I felt like a sham or it was disingenuous, but I could feel that was starting to creep up, that what am I doing here? I'm not actually connected to selling anything I'm that interested in anymore. And so it was not as calculated as riding a digital wave to future success and profits, and it was more, how do I reconnect with the things that I care about and am passionate about in terms of what interests me in life.
That is so good for the audience to hear, because so many people that we talk to, that have started their esports career in any part of the world, and for many of them, it was like they were working in a bank. They're working in their family business. They're working, maybe they just got out of school or something, and they were like, I really want to do something in esports, video games, but I don't know how. But one of the things that we keep hearing over and over is just like you're describing there, is to follow your passion.
Yeah.
Which, you hear that all the time. But to also be willing, what I liked hearing you talk about was working as a box boy, or working as at a music store, because
I clean toilets. I clean toilets for 3 years. In a record store, I got up at 6 a.m. to be there by 7 to clean the toilets in the office for 3 hours before I opened the store at 10 a.m. I did that for 3 years.
That's the kind of passion that it's like so many people in esports have. They will do almost anything to be part of the industry. The other thing that I think is good for the audience to hear is how you are always looking at the industry as a whole, because no matter what happens, we will all look back at this time in esports, and this will be a completely different time than it will be in 5 years, in 10 years. It'll be like, and we have no idea exactly where things are going, and we could pretend that we did. But it's like, so to always keep your eyes on where the industry is going. And that's true no matter where you are in the world. Hey, let's talk about Fortress Esports, because one of the things that I think is really interesting there is what you're doing at Fortress Esports. So if you could describe a little bit of what you're doing, but to start out, what would be really interesting is I always like to hear people's stories about how it got started. It's like, did you get a group of people together? Was there a team? It's like, what was it that was out there that you're like, hey, no one's doing this, let's go do it?
Yeah, good. So it started out, like I already hinted, that I had an inkling that there was something interesting in that space when I was at Village, and I wanted to figure out how could you do something if it wasn't involved, if you weren't able to like set up a AAA studio and start making more Call of Duties. No one can do that, right? That path is taken by the Activisions and the Blizzards, and no one's I can't imagine, unless you can find a couple of lazy $1 billion to set up a studio and do that. So, and I've got no understanding of that business. So I thought, how could you enter this industry without that sort of esoteric specialist or extremely capital intensive understanding of it, like creating games effectively? I knew that was never going to be part of it. And it was a bit of a market scan, I guess, of saying, well, what's there and what's missing? And one of the things that struck me, being 50, well, then I was 45, but I'm 51 now, was that what was missing in games culture was what I call the spirit the spirit of the arcades of the 80s. So when I was a teenager in the 80s, the only way you could play video games was to leave your home and go to an arcade. Now, play good video games. I'm talking about playing like shitty Pac-Man on an Atari 2400 or whatever. That was horrible. I'm talking about playing good video games. The only way to do it was to get out of your house, where I lived, catch a train into the city, and go to the arcades in the downtown of Melbourne and hang out with your mates. And it was great. You'd get good at games. You'd go to Macca's. You'd get a burger, you'd play a couple of hours in an arcade, you just hang out there and have an awesome afternoon with your friends, all hanging out in the arcade, and then get on a train, go home. And, to me, that was a really important part of my life when I was a teenager, just going out. And then when I was at university in the early 90s, I'd be with a few mates. We'd do the things you do at uni. I won't go into those details, but we would do whatever we needed to do after study, and we would then go for a walk down Lygon Street around the corner from Melbourne Uni, and there was a whole bunch of like nefarious arcades at the back of the pizza parlours and all that, and we'd just wander in and be playing like Twin Cobra or Double Dragon and those 90s games until 4 a.m, and then stagger back to our dorms or whatever. And that was just inherently part of what I understood to be games culture. But then it sort of occurred to me that had been lost. Like that's Gen X culture. For the millennials and Zoomers who'd grown up, especially millennials, the idea you were at home playing video games with a headset on your head, online gaming. And what's an interesting observation that I've learned more and more having set up Fortress is that for a lot of folks, and anyone probably under the age of 40, when you're playing games at home, console game or PC games, you usually think of playing games with other people online and talking to them while you play. To me, funnily enough, that's anathema. I hate the idea of playing with strangers online. Now, I know that's weird. It sounds weird, but it's so alien to me to have, like, just meet people in a lobby and just have just strangers playing, talking to them. I just can't bear it. I'm not criticizing. It's the opposite kind of culture.
I completely agree. Nope.
I don't get it now, but for millennials and Zoomers, that's just the way they grew up, and that's how they play games. My children, my teenagers, that's how they play games with their mates online. Now, I just thought, well, how do you bring that 80s arcade spirit back? Like, this is something that I know is valuable. I had an intuition it's a valuable experience. I could see in the esports world that people would go out, thousands of people in places like Korea and China and all that, or in Germany, whatever, go out to watch 10,000 people watching League of Legends finals. I'm like, well, clearly that's that at that scale. 10,000 people will turn up for a Dota 2 final. That's pretty cool. But I couldn't see at that more suburban city, small level, where was it? Like, why are these people turning up to these huge stadium esports matches, but there's not an always on, place where people would go and hang out and have the same kinds of cultural, social experiences around video games? And that was the moment that dawned on me, like, this could be the way into this industry. Knowing what I knew from Village Roadshow and the music industry about concerts and live entertainment, about theme parks and about, going to the cinema. An interesting takeaway at Village Roadshow was the kind of like the unspoken company motto was, people will always want to go out. So you could talk, it's a bit like COVID, the horrors of COVID. People talking all day long about how good's this Zoom thing, how wonderful is it we can all work from home. Well, I think that's bullshit, because I actually think that people ultimately hate being trapped at home Zooming all day. They want to be out mingling with people. They want to be social. It's a part of our DNA. So I just thought this needs to be capitalized. There needs to be a way forward with the business model that really taps that spirit.
What's interesting is you're talking about the arcades, because you took to Reginald in Ghana as an example. I mean, he's got stories just like you of the time that they would spend in the arcades. And the other thing about it is just what you're mentioning is just the social aspect of it. I mean, the community there that was being built. So at Fortress, you have what are all the different activities that you have there?
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously have games, but you have other things as well.
So that's probably a good juncture to talk firstly about the name of our business and where
because
because it's probably one of the most perhaps important takeaways for if I've got to say anything today, this is really important. It's that even though our company is called Fortress Esports, and even though the original ideas were inspired by what I had observed in that world of esports, Fortress as a company now is actually light years away from being a sort of dedicated esports business. We're just not. I say a lot to a lot of folks, we make more money with Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games than we do with esports. And so that was the biggest kind of second light bulb moment, was you can't, at least not in the environment that I'm in here in Australia, and so I can't speak for others around the world who are in different conditions, but in Australia, there was no business case to be made of any significance with an esports model. The only way forward with a feasible business model was with what we call a games culture business. So we understood at that time, and we now increasingly understand, that esports is just a subset of a larger, bigger conversation around games culture. And if you think that good luck if you've worked it out. And I'd love to know folks who've made a lucrative business out of a pure play esports business. There's probably a handful of companies in the world that have done that, like ESL and some of the teams. But to my thinking, certainly the way Fortress thinks about it, esports is just a small part of a bigger pie, which is the games pie, which can involve everything right through from Magic the Gathering card game playing or role-playing games, through to all the ancillary things people dig, like cosplay and, collecting pins that are, all the things that are part of kind of a broader games culture, right through to, of course, hardcore esports, folks who love, League of Legends and Fortnite or not even Fortnite, CSGO and all the serious esports dudes, right? There's a whole pantheon of interests. And my view is, and where Fortress now positions itself, we say we're Australia's number one games culture company. And we don't really, even though our holding company, our parent company is Fortress Esports, the business, as most people understand it, the punters, the customers, think of our company as Fortress Melbourne, which is the flagship venue, which we can talk about in a minute, or just Fortress Australia. So if you go to our social channels, often you won't really see much mentioning of esports. We talk about Fortress Australia, we talk about Fortress Melbourne, and soon we'll be talking about Fortress Sydney. So the real important takeaway in terms of for this podcast, talking about how do you make an economic model out of games and esports, is that it's very, very difficult to make significant revenues from esports, at least as I've understood it, and we can talk a bit about why that is, as opposed to broadening your purview and saying, how can I potentially extract more value by presenting a broader games offering than just this smaller, narrow band being esports.
So yeah, you invited the question there. It's like, so why is it that esports can't support? Because a lot of times I think people think, I want an esports venue. I want to create an esports club. I want a dedicated place for people to come and play with their friends and so on. So what is your take on that?
My take's this. Yeah, so a whole bunch of different angles we can come at. Peck away at the business model. So firstly, one of the biggest problems you got with esports is the rules are governed by the publishers, and you don't have much control. If you're trying to create a business, whether it be a managed teams or in a team or prize money or whatever, sponsorship, whatever you're trying to do, we'll talk about sponsorship in a minute, but if you're trying to set up an esports business, you need to know, of course, that the publishers still own all the IP. So you're kind of you're kind of at the mercy of whatever they decide is the new rules of engagement. And that's certainly not a criticism of them. It's their business. It's their IP. They can do whatever they want with it. I applaud that. But it means that you are beholden to, Apex, if EA said tomorrow, Apex Legends, we're not allowing any more tournaments with more than $5,000 prize money, or we'll sue you, they could do that. If you, I mean, maybe with Dota and with CSGO, when Valve are far less hands-on and they allow a lot of, anyone to really do whatever they want, pretty much. But if you wanted to run a Valorant tournament and put up $1 million prize money, you'd be hearing pretty fast from Riot Games going, "What the hell are you doing? It's not allowed." So anytime you try to scale the economics of an esports play, you're going to usually have to parlay with the publisher, and you may get a good result, but you may not, because it's their prerogative. It's not like football, where you could set up a league and play football and put prize money, do whatever you like, because football's kind of like the rules are shared. No one can sue you for kicking a ball around a park, but the publishers own their IP and can sue you if you want to. If you get on their radar as doing something that's particularly lucrative, they're going to want to know, well, what's my share of this potentially? Now, maybe not, but that's you've got a high risk play there, because you can't scale necessarily without having that conversation with the publisher, and you don't know what the outcome of that conversation will be.
Does that impact the games that you select for your tournaments and for which you're offering?
Well, it does. I mean, it does, because we wouldn't just turn around tomorrow and say, let's run a Valorant tournament, because there's a lot of red tape and things you need to go through to get approval to run. So you need approvals. So anytime you need approvals, you need to have administration and bureaucracy, and it may not just be a blanket approval. You're going to have to get assets approved. You're going to get, all along the way, you've got to get approval. And their timelines are going to be very different to your timelines. And often these publishers are multi-billion-dollar juggernauts that have, just zero concern. And again, I'm not criticizing them. It's just more the reality. It's not a critique. It's the reality of on-the-ground facts, is that a giant US-based monster publishing company making huge AAA games that make billions of bucks aren't necessarily going to be worried about, or have much concern for what you're doing in Portugal, or some suburb of Melbourne, and you want to do something, or wherever you are in the world. You've got that as a consideration so that anything beyond sort of, you might call, hobby farm business is going to potentially require you to need to have those engagements with the publishers. So that's one. It's more of a risk vulnerability that you've got to consider. The other, probably more important one, is the scale problem of esports is that to fund teams and to have enough revenue that funds the teams, so the publishers aren't putting up enough money, because they don't need to, right? They're certainly not in minor markets like Australia or some of the countries in the USA, probably in Germany and Korea, where the gigantic esports leagues exist. You're going to get enough economy of scale that the publishers and others there'll be enough of a prize pool and enough money. But in a country like Australia, our example is there's just not enough dough entering the ecosystem that can fund the ecosystem at the level of professionalism required to be a player on the world stage. So teams recently have folded in Australia, or have merged or disappeared, because they can't pay the players properly and they can't scale enough. And the other vulnerability there is, if you can't get money from publishers to fund a league, then you're going to have to go looking for sponsors. And that can be a very hand-to-mouth exercise. You might get a 1-year deal. It might involve a bunch of caveats and conditions. You need to be able to, show the sponsor that you really have delivered value to them, when in fact you should be more concerned about winning the game rather than how are we servicing our sponsor, making them happy. And so often there's a misalignment. So sponsorship money, certainly in Australia, hasn't been really lucrative enough, and it's because it's a burgeoning industry that hasn't consolidated. You'll see millions and millions of dollars going into Australian football or rugby league and those sort of things in Australia, but you won't see nothing like that entering esports industries. So what you've got then is you've got this quite a vulnerable business model, vulnerable to the whims of third parties that you don't control. And that's not a great business model. It's certainly not a great one when you're trying to get investment, because anyone with cash looking to invest is going to ask you about these risks. Like, oh, yeah, so how are you going to fund the players next year? And if you say, well, we're hoping to land 3 sponsors, good luck with that, right? They're going to go, well, have you landed them? No, but we're hoping to. We're hoping to win prize money. Well, are you going to win? Well, I can't promise that. Okay, so that's not there's no guaranteed revenue there. So it's hard then to raise capital to stand up an esports business, a standalone esports business. So for us, that was a big revelation. We also understood that if we build an esports arena, or what we like to call a competitive games arena, like we've got in Melbourne, and we're going to be building now in Sydney, we quickly realised that there's not enough of an appetite in the marketplace of consumers to pay, say, tickets to watch local amateur esports games. If you think, as we once did, and then we course corrected pretty quickly, that every week, you'll sell 1,000 tickets at $20 a throw for people just to come and watch the local Joes just, fight out on a Fortnite comp with $1,000 prize money. It just doesn't happen. You're lucky to get 50 people to turn up for free, even if you give them all a free hot dog and a free drink. So it's just, people will turn up in droves to watch grand finals or epic finals at the sort of height of global esports. So you've got quite an enormous gulf between the interest people have in peak elite esports at the global level that you see when you see those 20,000 people or 50,000 people in Poland attending some enormous Intel Masters thing, versus what happens at that local level, at the level of interest in just the suburban shit kickers out to play an esports game, semi-pro, whatever. It doesn't inspire the same level of passion and interest from the punters. And there's an enormous gulf there. And so for us, then it becomes esports then is more of a augmented part of our business model that's a value add to inspire community competitive game playing, and less about thinking that we can turn it into a lucrative part of the business because there's some level of elite esports aspect to this. We do, though. We have done some things, like we bought the license to Blast, and we run Blast in Australia. So we have made certain plays in esports at a professional, serious level, and we did a beautiful job recently doing the Blast OCE qualifiers for the Global Blast tournament. So when we've picked our esports play, we go hard, and we do seek to go hardcore professional and make it really elite. But there's not an always on every week the revenues will flow from esports kind of model that we've understood. And again, that's my view. I'm sure you'll have listeners probably going, no way, we've got a great one going. And that's fantastic. I'm just providing a context of what we've seen in Australia.
That's one of the great things, because to be able to talk to you, because you've done this, and you've obviously put some thought into it, but you've actually you put your money into it. I mean, you put your time into it. You've been down this road, and that's really good for people that are thinking that that's a road that they want to go down out there. So when you're creating your what I'm hearing you saying is that you're almost kind of trying to stay under the radar of some of the publishers, and the others you're trying to engage with. Am I reading that right? Or
no? That's as in we don't stay under the radar. We have great relationships with all the publishers. We temper our ambitions, so we don't because we're not an esports organization per se. We're not reliant on running, say, weekly major esports tournaments with tens of thousands of dollars we're not trying to grow an elite esports program, which would attract more interest from publishers. We're very happy to keep it at the sort of grassroots community level at a much sort of modest level with modest, say, prize money or just just prizes. And that way the publishers are very happy with that, and it doesn't attract any undue attention.
Right.
But it's not, we're not off the radar. We're very much on the radar. We often have them involved in helping to promote them, but we're not aspiring to create an esports program that's, our view isn't that like within 5 years Fortress will be this elite Australian esports organisation that, you know, is like a global player that's been going toe to toe with ESL. That's not what Fortress is trying to do. We're much more agnostic in that we're more like what you might call the picks and the shovels to the miners. You know, we'll create the infrastructure, we'll create esports. Yeah, we'll create the venues for the community to hang out in. We'll create the spaces with computers for people to practice on, and we'll even have esports arenas for more, you know, amateur or mid-tier tournaments. But we don't aspire to having much to do with those 20,000 seat monster tournaments that happen, you know, twice a year in Melbourne or whatever. That's great that they happen because we make a heap of business when they happen, because, you know, DreamHack happened in Melbourne 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was the biggest weekend we'd ever had in trade. So we loved it. It was a win-win for everybody.
Yes. So, because I thought I saw something about PAX. You had some PAX events?
Yeah, so PAX is happening in Melbourne, not this weekend, next weekend, and there'll be 80,000 people turning up over 3 days to the Melbourne Convention Centre. So it's a gigantic event.
80,000?
Yeah, over 3 days. And, you know, we're a venue that's a 20-minute walk away, and that PAX event closes at 6 p.m. each night. So where do you think, you know, thousands and thousands of people looking to kick on are going to? Yeah, so we're expecting Fortress to be absolutely crushed in a good way when we open. And I guess it's probably time to give the listeners an understanding, because I've talked a lot about Fortress, but I guess the key takeaway in terms of what our business model rides on is that we build, as part of our model, we've got other things we do, but the cornerstone of our business model is that we build enormous games entertainment venues. So Fortress Melbourne was our first one, a flagship, and it's 2,500 square meters, which I don't even know what that is in feet. It's about 30,000 square feet across 2 levels, with an esports arena and it's got a giant 300 seat restaurant called the Tavern that's themed with all of our own IP, our own characters we created.
I always think of a Home Depot is 50,000 square feet. And
yeah, we're kind of
big. So it's like, man,
it's enormous.
A big chunk of that. It's like, wow,
it's enormous. And we've got a 58 PC dedicated LAN room. We've got a classic arcade. We got 2 kitchens, 2 bars. The arena can host 350 people. The venue's licensed 24 hours. It's a full alcohol licensed venue. You know, can hold it's 1,000 people. It's just got, it's a significant piece of infrastructure, games entertainment infrastructure, and we're building a similar one in Sydney, due to be opened in March next year, called Fortress Sydney. And so our model is about, perhaps to add colour to what I said earlier about esports, our model is based on being able to entertain people socially in our venues with food and drink and gameplay. And F&B is a big part of the model, so that food and beverage. We couldn't do the stuff we want to do and enter other parts of the game's ecosystem if we weren't providing cash flow via these physical venues.
Yeah, this is just so important, because this is exactly what is great for people to hear.
Yeah,
it's that you're setting it up in a way that there are other sources of revenue that have nothing to do with games, or nothing to do with esports or the playing of games, but it's more of the community that's there is going to be there for other things that can be revenue drivers. I think that's really key.
So we created we call it a home for gamers. It's one of our taglines. And how that works is, you referred earlier in the conversation to some of the insights and some of the things that inspired the model. Well, it wasn't hard to see when we walked around Melbourne, Sydney, and I actually went to places around the world to look at some of these, that the condition of, LAN cafes, as they're sometimes referred to, was pretty dire, right? You'd see these LAN cafes near student digs, fluoro lit, blankets for curtains, maybe a broken snack machine with a few Snickers in there, broken, dirty, filthy toilet, sometimes not even a women's toilet, and just awful, right? And we just went, if that's the state of social game playing, and yes, the pricing might be $2 an hour to rent a computer or $3 an hour, but that was indicative of the experience. Dirty, greasy, messy keyboards, broken key. It was just horrible. And we were thinking, well, this is how that's going. And then the arcades that were around were much better, but often they were engineered for family entertainment. They weren't designed for more adult after hours alcohol and food experience. So we said, how do you get all of this under the one roof and build at a level and at a scale that, to your point about Home Depot, is sort of like a Home Depot version of games culture. One of the ways we used to describe Fortress is we build cathedrals for gamers. Like just this,
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, just an epic, awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping walk in and have your head basically torn off. Like, oh my! We have so many people. Every time someone comes to Fortress for the first time, they're just like, Jesus Christ! How did this exist? And or who built this? And so we sort of always wanted to have that sort of awe-inspiring. So when people come, of course, then they're feeling like they're just immersed in this tribute to their culture, and then they spend on the food, the drink, and the games.
Now, what I hear you saying there is, or what I hear coming through is your background in entertainment. It's like you're talking about theme parks, but just entertainment in general. You want to create something that is entertaining. The question that I want to ask, and I'm not asking you how much you're spending to create your venues there, but if someone's out there looking at, I want to create a venue, what kinds of price ranges do people have to spend to create the ones that you're talking about with the curtains up? But it's going to be completely different in different parts of the world. But I think people significantly underestimate all the different types of costs that are going to show up.
Indeed. My answer to that is it depends on your business strategy. Our business strategy has always been that when we enter a market, we would be laying a flagship down like an enormous tent pole, like slamming it down and going, we are here. This is the hub of the brand, and we're just an explosion of the Fortress brand just going woomph. So because of that, and building cathedrals, not building cottages, you can infer then that it's many millions of dollars to build the kinds of things that we're building. But we were able to raise the capital for that because the scale with which we envisage this and the additional revenue streams that this business strategy implies, which is the credibility, the permanence, and the visibility, the optics of this, and the strength then of the ensuing revenue streams coming through just the F&B channels and all the other channels, meant that the kind of folks that can stump up that kind of capital had confidence that this was we weren't fly-by-night operators who, were just ephemeral. Hey, we've got an app. Who wants to invest in an app? Hey guys, I got an esports app. It'll be ready in 2 years. Give me $500,000. We were saying we're going to build this sizable, significant, timeless piece of infrastructure in this major city of Australia that's going to have this extremely powerful brand pretty quickly, that's going to then be able to enter other parts of the games culture ecosystem, being founded upon the permanence, credibility, and the optics of this cathedral for gamers. So that then infers that if that's your business strategy, which is ours, you're going to need to raise millions of dollars to do this. However, if your business strategy, as you understand it, is different, and you think that in your market you could actually just have 20 computers in a little hallway with a snack machine, but hopefully some clean toilets, and all you're hoping to do is
two toilets,
and two toilets, and you're just going to serve Coke, and you don't need a liquor license, and you don't need to scale like we imagined, and you don't need to create original IP, and you don't need to do all that stuff. If that's a market for you, you could probably get away with that, under $1 million, maybe $500,000. Now, again, that's Australian dollars and Australian mindset, depending on the listener and where you are in the world, depending on labor costs and what the standard price of doing business is. It could be more, it could be probably significantly less. But my view always is, though, that if you're going to do something, certainly to create a customer experience, it's just a weak option to think you should just sort of not cut corners, but how do I make it sort of you shouldn't look at making something dismal, and you shouldn't say let's just find let's just screw the customer, get some computers, make sure that there's electricity and internet, and off we go. My view would be, well, where's the passion, where's the belief, where's the model? You're just basically a rent taker. If you want to create sorry.
No, I think that's one of the things you're saying is you can probably go into these venues and you can see which ones are done by people who are into the culture, understand the culture.
Yeah.
And people who, for whatever reason, are into it for other reasons. When you're talking to your investors, and again, it's completely different from your viewpoint there, from around the world. But when you're talking to investors, do they understand esports? One of the things I was really interested to hear a couple of weeks ago or last week, we had Luca Trucconi from Red Bull South Africa, and he was saying one of the things in sponsorship that he has found is that now people who are going in and talking to people about being a sponsor, whether it's Red Bull or whether it's someone else, there's a better chance that you're talking to someone who is a gamer. He said, in years past, you kind of had to explain what the whole thing was. But now, he said, it's kind of this shift is happening certainly in South Africa for him. So do you find that when you're talking to investors, certainly at a larger scale, that they understand esports as a business and what you're doing as a business and how esports fits into it?
Not necessarily, but that's why we don't talk much about esports. That's why esports, even in our investor decks, doesn't feature much. We talk mostly about games and games culture, because again, I keep saying it. It's just esports to me is it's a cul-de-sac that has viability and has a business model attached to it. But to me, it's an addendum to a bigger business model, which is games and games culture. It's not a business model, and to me, it only becomes a lucrative business model if it can be, or if it's augmenting something else. And so esports, when we go to investors, is part of our deck, but it's part of a sort of the whole picture that we paint involves, like I said before, we might have a page about role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons, and then you'll have a page about esports, and then you'll have a page about another part of the culture that we might be tapping, whether it be board game culture. And so esports plays a role in the pantheon of games culture, but so then we don't need necessarily for that investor to zone in. They might ask some good questions about esports, but we're not then scuttling the ship if that particular investor doesn't really get esports, because they usually understand other things that are part of the conversation, whether it be board games or whether it be console games or whether it be food and drink. Of course, most people, everyone understands the restaurant business and hospitality. So what we often talk about is just core business principles, like the power of brand and brand equity, and the things we do as a business that feed the Fortress brand, that then allows that brand to migrate into other parts of a business, other parts of, say, an ecosystem, like the games culture ecosystem. where do we go as a business? Say in a few years, we might be able to talk about a fortress management company. Let's say, this is I'm just blue sky, but you would say, all right, well, Fortress
that's
brand,
going to be my next question: is what the future looks like.
right?
So that's great. You went into
so
that.
you'd say, all right, well, if the Fortress brand is that powerful in the games culture world, then where's the Fortress agency and management company for influencers and talent? Where is the Fortress? People ask me a lot about, is there a Fortress game? Right now, that we've always said, well, that from the early days, I always thought that was just a crazy idea because standing up games cost millions. But maybe there's a world where we license our characters to a company because our brand is powerful enough that someone would want to have that conversation. So, these are the areas that we understand. Where's the Fortress merchandise play? How where do we go with our brand for the pins and the toys and the bobbleheads and all the things that people have talked to us and want more T-shirts and more merch? This is all available to us as options as we grow the Fortress brand, and the Fortress brand grows as we continue to deliver very good customer experiences and create these cathedrals for gamers that people tell other people about and get excited about. And then we increasingly grow the physical footprint of the Fortress company around the nation, or hopefully one day internationally. And then we bring the brand with us, and that brand can then examine other aspects of the games culture industry. And there's so many areas of that you could name any, and we could say, well, yeah, why wouldn't we want to have that conversation if the brand is powerful enough to be able to extract value out of that industry?
See, and I don't think you would be thinking along those lines if you didn't have the background in the music business and in the entertainment business. Because that's the mindset there is what you're talking about, is build that brand and then take that brand and move it in as many directions as you can to monetize it, which
That's
I think
right.
is great.
Yeah, and you can see the way esports teams have done it, right? So the biggest esports teams in the world can do everything from manage the team and the agency and all the talent and all of that stuff, and then have a really nice content and production business and have merchandise and then put together tournaments and white label tournaments. And so esports organizations have done that really nicely, the ones that have been successful. And merch is the most obvious one that most people almost immediately move to, is merchandise. As soon as you set up your local cafe, you're selling the branded cafe T-shirts is the most basic example of that, right? So you should always be looking for, if you feel like your brand has got potency, you should be saying, well, where could I do it with credibility and passion to get people who love your brand, who want to just, people when they fall in love with your brand, they just want to give you money for stuff. We've had plenty of folks who love Fortress's brand, and they're just saying, well, what else you got? What do you got? What can I buy from you?
That's interesting, because I remember hearing a few months ago now people talking about different esports teams. They're selling their merchandise, and they were like, why are they selling it? They should be giving it away as marketing, as a way to market. And I'm thinking, my God, have they not? Do they not pay attention to Disney and every other, Marvel, DC? It's like they don't give away squat. I mean, they sell that, and they make it valuable so that people want to buy it. It's like, it's not a marketing device. It is, but it's a revenue. I mean, the consumer products groups over at the studios, which probably better than me, is just they're phenomenal. It's always amazing. The other thing I hear you talking about that I think is interesting is, I hear you keying off of other events. It's just like PAX is one example.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, how can you take advantage of these other things that are happening in the world around you that can benefit your organization? And I think a lot of people don't do that enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do a watch party for all the big international esports events. So in our arena, we have the League of Legends Worlds Final coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're doing a ticketed event, even though it's just being shown. It's not obviously physical players in our venue. We're just showing it live on the big screen, but the community want to get out and be with their fellow League of Legends fans and hang out
Yes.
in our venue, right? Because it's a great place to watch it with other people and cheer along and have some food and drink. So we've done that quite a lot. We do those watch parties go down great. So when there's international events, we jump on them. I mean, we've had Xbox run an amazing live Xbox event that happened in, I think, California, and they hired Fortress out from 3 in the morning until 7 in the morning. And we had like 300 people arrive at Fortress at 3 in the morning for this special Xbox event.
Wow.
Yeah. So, we're definitely always looking around for those international events that we can create a Fortress version or a Fortress watch party or something, because obviously the community for esports and gaming is global and people follow that stuff. And so when we can create an event around it, whether it be a local event like PAX or DreamHack, or whether it be something significant globally, then we're all over that. Even some of the publishers have done game launches, and we've done live events coinciding with the big reveal of the game or the launch, whatever that's happened in the States. We've done that, and it's gone down a treat.
Now, is there going to be a Fortress Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'd love that. Part of the problem with LA is I've always wondered, where would you put it? I mean, you could sort of imagine Hollywood or West Hollywood is where I've always hung out when I've gone to LA, as a lot of tourists do. But maybe there's a place like a shopping center. Or
put it downtown. I mean, it used to be Staples Center, but the Crypto.com Center, whatever they call it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is now.
Downtown is just become an entertainment center here in LA.
It's vibrant. Yeah, it's vibrant.
No one ever thought that downtown would ever be alive.
No, 20 years it was horrible. 20 years ago, downtown LA
dangerous.
was a ghost town. Yeah.
Yes, and we should have all been buying real estate down there.
I know. I wish
at that time. I mean, but so there are different places, and I tell you, if I ever drive out to the West Side and take a picture of Riot and put it on social media, I get the biggest reaction.
Oh, I've been there. I've been to the Riot Game Studio in Santa Monica. Huh? It's awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
They do a great job there, and one of the things that Riot do really well, which is an inspiration for Fortress, was when I went to their studios, and I went to the bar or the coffee shop at their Santa Monica campus, and they'd done the recreation of a bar, I think, or the coffee joint from the game physically in real life. And I love that. And that was part of what inspired me when we built Fortress Melbourne, to create all this kind of character sort of vibe in our tavern that made you feel like you were inside a video game.
No, I know we could go on and on, and I got to be a little respectful of your time here. Question that we do always ask people, though, and just kind of quickly at the end, is, and completely off on another subject, should the Olympics include esports in their official program?
Well, from a bias point of view, Australia are really, we punch above our weight in the Olympics, and so I'd probably say no, because we don't punch above our weight necessarily in esports. So I'd say selfishly keep it to swimming and the things that we win heaps of gold medals in, and then I'd be
yes.
But I understand the controversy. Is video game playing a sport? I don't know. My only queasiness.
This is the first time you've hesitated.
Yeah, it's a bit, because it goes to this thing that I feel a bit queasy about, because the games aren't, all the Olympic sports pretty much are all universal sports that no one owns the rights to the sport.
Yeah. Yep.
And anytime now that you've got a game, something in the Olympics where it's privately owned, the rules of the game are set by a private organisation or a public one, but a corporation, and it's not like the rules of shooting or football or any of those sports, swimming. Something about that makes me hesitate. Like, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying it just feels odd that, to have an Overwatch or a Fortnite Olympics. You say, well, how does this? Is this enriching Epic Games to have that game in there? Like, it's not a neutral game. Every other sport in the Olympics is sort of just a revenue neutral game that no one really owns. And so I don't know how they square that, and I don't know enough about it to have a full view, but that would be my main question about it is what do you do about the fact that you're setting a game up that's a privately held IP that people compete on?
Yeah, think of the prize you are awarding them by bringing them in and giving them that recognition and that status out there. No, I don't think there's a good question either way. One of the things, because we're always on the podcast, we're always talking about creating jobs around the world. Yeah. If the Olympics did include esports in some fashion, just the whole run up, the whole qualifying aspect around the world would create an incredible number of jobs. So that's completely separate from venues. But
true, it would. I think it'd be hard to pick a game. I think is it esports generally, or would it end up being? Obviously, it wouldn't probably be Counter-Strike which is one of the most arguably the most popular esport, but they're not going to have an MA15 rated game. Probably wouldn't be appropriate. So they sort of almost need a PG or a G rated game, right?
Yeah, we can pretty much say that Mortal Kombat will not be included.
That's not going to get it. So it'd probably end up being League of Legends or Dota or something like that. That's a bit more G rated.
When we were talking about activations over here at Disney, Marvel Disney, they would let us talk to them about cartoony violence, like an Overwatch or a Fortnite. But certainly if there was something a little, and we knew better than to take anything that was too violent over there. I mean, we knew that was going to be a non-starter. So, but yeah, that's another huge question. I
don't know how to answer that one. And then if you pick League of Legends, Riot, you may as well start buying shares in Riot Games, right? Because there's something there that enriches a private business by picking their game as the official Olympic game. So how does that work?
Yes. Yeah, all kinds of questions come up. The other thing I liked about the discussion here is that you coming from an entertainment background, I haven't really heard you ever mention traditional sports and how things should follow traditional sports, which I really find an interesting. I'm on your side, coming from that background, because I think a lot of times people are trying to emulate traditional sports,
right?
And so which is not always, I think, the best model to follow. And where I think esports is entertainment. So,
the biggest problem you've got with esports, again, to muse on esports and some of the challenges certainly in Australia, is, and I know it from my son, who I took to a few esports events, like some Intel Masters events a year or two or 3 years ago. And, he'd never seen an esports event, so he gets very excited. And it was exciting, CSGO. It's like, oh my God, how cool is this? It's a final, global final, or it's whatever it might be. And you walk away from those sorts of events and your blood's pumping. You're like, oh my God, how exciting was that? It was really good. And the next step, when you get home, you're like, well, okay, I got excited by that Counter-Strike event. Who do I now support? Like, what's the league? Right? If you live in England and you like football, English football, you're going to find a Premier League team, and there's a normal or a normative process for which you will find your home in football. Like, I barrack for a football team in Melbourne called North Melbourne, which is Australian rules football, and they've been around since 1869. And when I was a kid they were very good in the 70s, and I was a little kid, and I just ended up supporting them, to the chagrin of my parents that didn't support them. But usually people end up supporting the team that their parents raised them into, or maybe the local neighborhood has a team and you just grew up going to the games in the suburb or whatever, right? But in esports, there's not, one of the real problems, at least in Australia, is there's not a natural sort of channel or conduit to make you aware of and understand what is the official league for that game that I should then support a team in that league. And so when my son, the example was, he's like all excited about Counter-Strike, like, well, what do I do now? Who do I even follow? Who do I support? It's a splintered and balkanized ecosystem of different tournaments, and is it ESL and this and that, and who runs the league? So there's no global league that's easily understood. Plus, esports generally, at least traditionally has made a hash of almost deliberately making things opaque and hard for newbies, because for a lot of years there was almost a bit of a scorn around people like junior, like wet behind the ears newcomers arriving who knew nothing of the jargon, hadn't had a clue what Discord was. It wasn't very welcoming to help you kind of be immersed in esports. There was a very insular culture. And so it's not made itself easy as an industry to figure out, who do I support? And maybe a bit more now, there's these big global teams like the Manchester Uniteds of esports, these global esports teams. Like, I guess, because we have a lot to do with them because of our friendship and partnership with Dell with Team Liquid. So they have, global reach, big team. They have, activations around the world, and people say, "Oh, I support Team Liquid." But even then, if you said Team Liquid, well, what is it? Do you support which game are you supporting that they're playing in? Do you support the team? Do you support... Now then it gets granular, because you're like, well, I like that guy who's in that team that plays Rocket League, but then he was there and now he got poached to this other team. Do I still support Team Liquid playing the Rocket League team, or do I now move to another team because I like that guy? So because there's not that deep roots in culture, it's very hard to work out, who do you really support in esports, and where does my allegiances lie? And I think that's been a major problem, bringing a lot of more mainstream, you might call them normies, into the esports world, because it's very hard to figure out, where do I go if I'm interested in this?
No, and I think that's one of the things that traditional sports has figured out very well. I mean,
absolutely.
Anywhere. The ultimate here in the U.S. is always, for American football, was the Green Bay Packers. It's like the people who have season tickets to Green Bay Packers, they put them in their will. They are handed down, literally.
Yeah.
And there's a guy next door, and he was telling me about how, there was going to be a big fight in their family because, they only had so many tickets, and when there's too many kids, and it's just like, but it's a whole different religion. Hey,
the Melbourne Cricket Club has a 20-year waiting list. So if you want to be a member of the Melbourne Cricket Club, they'll put you on a waiting list when you're born, and by about the age of 21, 22, you might get lucky and get your membership.
Amazing.
So it's like that.
I'm not going to take any more of your time here, because I could keep talking to you, because there's all kinds of interesting things here. And while there's not probably many people in our audience who are looking at building the kinds of things that you're building there, there's so many good concepts that you're talking about that anyone can put some thought into, because I've talked to so many people who are interested in venues, but when they start putting a lot of thought into them, I mean, you've already done that. So, hey, I really appreciate your time talking about this here tonight. Well, it's
My
tonight
pleasure.
for me. So, okay. So where can people find you online? Hey there. So where can people find you online?
Me personally? Well, I have a LinkedIn.
You want them to go to Fortress?
Yeah, you could go to fortressmelbourne.com. That's our website. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. So, no, again, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. This is the Gamers Change Lives podcast. Season 2, Follow the Money. Play games, create jobs, change lives. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.